is be true to what you said on paper.
Well, welcome back to the final hour of At the Round Table with Manley. We are heading down the home stretch there, Dr. Bradley. You're listening to At the Round Table with Manley. I'm your host, Larry Elson, in studio with my brother, Dr. Bradley, as well as our engineer, Pastor Hobbs.
Right? Hey, how you doing, brother? I'm actually got a text from my dear friend, Pastor Tony Price, who's listening to the show, and he was talking about how Roberto Clemente was a very positive and great humanitarian in spite of the discrimination that he was receiving.
Exactly.
You know, so people are listening, and to Brother Tony, thank you, man. We got to get together and talk, brother.
Absolutely, because what he did was he didn't only, and this is where one of the things I really prided and tried to do as president of the Manlio was to get from the infighting from us, figuring if you're Hispanic, if you're Haitian, if you're Jamaican, that somehow we're different. We are not. We're suffering all the same. But there's been this perpetuating that it's if we didn't have to take care of those folks, we could do better for you. And then you realize they ain't going to do nothing for any of us.
I hear you.
So if we come together, that's the biggest fear, is that we understand we're all crabs in a barrel trying to climb out, and we have to do better. With that said, we want to thank our sponsor, Guaranteed Rate Mortgage Company. For all your mortgage needs, give branch manager Cora Holbrook a call at area code 781-342-0252. Guaranteed Mortgage is located at 75 State Street in downtown Boston, Mass. Guaranteed Rate Mortgage Company, guaranteed to exceed your expectations. If you want to call in number, the call-in number here is area code 617-282-0685, 617-282-0685. You know,
amen.
Talking about what inflicts us. So, Dr. Brown, I want to get into this unaffordable rental costs.
All right, so we're going to shift the conversation.
Well, it all kind of ties in.
Yeah, it does.
Right, because this is another form of discrimination, right? It says unaffordable rental costs now plague 44 million across the country, right? So for the first time in more than 2 decades of research, every state now has renters who are nearing a financial breaking point in housing affordability. New research released by Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies and Moody's Analytics independently reached the same conclusion. Consumers are struggling with a growing percentage of their incomes going towards keeping a roof over their heads. On January 19th, Moody's released its update on rental affordability. Rising mortgage rates cause many households to be priced out from beyond home buyers and to remain renters rather than home buyers. Apartment demand surged as a result and drove rates sky high. The report concluded, as the disparity between rent growth and income growth widens, Americans' wallets feel financial distress as wage growth trail rent growth. Days later, on January 25th, Harvard's study went a step further by factoring race and poverty into the analysis. This is where we come in, always on the ballot. Renters living in communities of color in high poverty, low income, and low rent neighborhoods were more likely to experience financial distress. More than 3/5 of renters behind on their housing payments lived in communities of color, while about 2/5 lived in high poverty or low income neighborhood, concluded the JCA. There was a time when a single full-time income could financially provide for families, but today most families are working harder than ever and still need at least 2 incomes to make financial ends meet. According to the National Low Income Housing Coalition in 2022, there was no county, metro area, or state where a person earning the federal prevailing state or local minimum wage for a 40-hour week could afford a modest 2-bedroom rental home. Although the U.S. Census Bureau finds that the nation's median income in 2021 was $70,000, I don't know who they pay. The same figure for Black America was only $42,000. Here we go. This $30,000 income difference is further examined by a Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis wealth inequality update. On average, according to the Federal Reserve report, Black and Hispanic families own only about 25 cents compared to respectively per $1 of white family. These substantial gaps remain largely unchanged despite fluctuations from 1989 to 2022. So for every 25 cents that we have, the white folks have $1. In response to these and other issues, the White House Domestic Policy and National Economic Council recently issued the White House Blueprint for Renters' Bill of Rights to promote fair and fairness for Americans living in rental housing. The blueprint calls for safe, quality, accessible, and affordable housing, clear and fair housing for all. Over 44 million households, or roughly 35% of the U.S. population, live in rental housing. And while federal laws such as Fair Housing Act, the American with Disabilities Act, the Violence Against Women's Act, and the Fair Credit Reporting Act offer renters certain focus protection, there is no comprehensive set of federal laws protecting renters. However, well-intentioned and the newly released principles lack authorities to require implementation, but the Department of Housing and Urban Development has embraced the efforts by allocating a merely $20 million for eviction protection to grant program, which has already been exhausted. After more than 50 years since the enactment of the federal laws to ensure fair housing, equal employment, and credit, a lack of consistent enforcement, there we go, of these laws have allowed backtracking on hard-fought victories. So, again, here we are, right? So, we know what housing costs today. For every $1 for white America, ours is worth 23 cents. So there's a 74,000, ours is 40. So it's a $30,000 gap in the same positions, same household for Black America, Black and Latinos, and white America, 70,000 to 40,000. How do you afford to live, Dr. Bradley?
It boggles my mind, man. It really does. But I can just tell you, just looking back on how this country was, land in this country was allocated to people coming over from Europe, and while Black people were so-called emancipated but given absolutely nothing to survive off of, while people coming over from Europe were given 40 acres and more. You know what I mean? Go out and just state your own claim. Forget about the fact that the Indians was here, they were here before you. They owned the land. You know, it's their land, but we're going to take it and give it to you. This is a manifestation. This is this is the manifestation of that praxis.
Yeah.
You know, where you have this disparity between equity. I'm sorry, not equity, but between just growth, wealth. That's what I'm looking for.
Right.
You know,
617-282-0685, 617-282-0685. You're listening to At the Round Table with Ma'am Leo. I'm your host, Larry Ellison. In studio with my brother, my co-host, my brother from another, Dr. Bradley. The doctor is in the house giving you a checkup from the neck up. You know, we're talking about the housing inequity. But to that point, Dr. Bradley, this is why when we're talking about T. Michael's program and that economic, right? Because, you know, when he was saying that most of these folks, once they get started, are making somewhere around $45 out, that puts them in that 70,000 percentile where they can become home. Even if they have to rent, they can afford it, right? And build their way up. But if you're they raised the minimum wage in most places to $15 an hour. That's still about $600 a week, right?
That's not very. That's not. You know what I mean?
Well, let's do the math.
Yeah, it's money. Don't get me wrong. And people may come back and say, "Well, you know, it's better than nothing." I got that, but it's not enough to.
Not much more than nothing.
Yeah, it's not much more. It's not enough to live off of.
Well,
not in this society.
Let's take this housing piece here, Dr. Bradley.
Yeah.
600. Let's be generous, right? Let's be generous, right? So 15. You got your calculator out?
Yeah, I got it right here.
Okay, so 15 times 35, because people don't realize it. You don't get paid for your lunch hour, right?
Hold on, bro. 15.
35 hours, right?
525.
$525 a week.
Yeah.
So let's say taxes, another $100 combined between the two. So you're taking home $425 a week.
Yeah, 425.
The average
you gonna get out
rent in Boston for a one bedroom is over $2,000.
So you got that 425 times 4. That's $1,700 a month.
So I'm still short $300 just for rent.
But we haven't included your tax, your lights, your
you want electricity,
your water.
You want water?
Your food.
You want to eat? And don't tell me you want heat too.
Yeah.
Right.
There's some serious issues.
We have
so
how many? So I need 3 of those jobs at $15 an hour.
So what time are you going to sleep? It's only 3/8 in a
Maybe
in
I
a day.
get one as a night watchman. I can sleep while I'm working. Right, and we'll make a lot of this, but this is what folks are. This is what I'm talking about when we're not, like at the mayor's State of the City address, right? She announced giving land in some of these areas, right, so they could build affordable housing. One, we know these big developers are not coming in here looking to put up 2 and 3 family houses on these lots, right? Because there's no money. There's not enough meat on the bone for them. And if you give it to someone who can't afford or doesn't have access to capital to build, you've given them nothing, right? What, are they gonna put a tent or a sleeping bag out there? Because a perfect example of that is T. Michael Thomas, the People's Academy, right? They gave him the land there at Quincy and Warren Street, but they gave him no funding, no resources, no assistance, right?
There you go.
So now they're saying, hey,
Or take the land back. You haven't done anything with the clock. The clock is ticking. It hasn't been developed. But that's a ploy just to keep you, to shut you up.
Well,
they know you can't. You don't have to. There's $34 million to develop it.
Right.
They know you don't have the money to actually build the structure on
Right.
it. So we give it to you. Now you got the land. What you going to do with it?
but even to that point, at Mamleo, we have our land, and now these impediments they putting in front of us to build on there, we're building what they claim they want: affordable housing, right, for seniors and people, and yet all these roadblocks that you put in our way, and we own the land, right? They didn't give it to us. We own the land. We're paying taxes. We're good citizens. We're good neighbors, and they're still saying we're gonna make you guys jump through all these. You claim this is what you want, but I guarantee you, if T. Michael loses that piece of parcel of land, because it is prime land, because it's right across one of the premier schools, it's right on the main artery there, that if some developer gets it, you'll see a skyscraper going up there, right? Something that doesn't even fit in the neighborhood, and then you'll see progress.
I just got a text from one of my siblings who said that the $15 per hour can only put struggling parents over the limit for certain government assistance.
You still are eligible. So
Yeah, because they may now make $1 too much. That's the kicker.
Wow. So what you're
I
saying
never thought
is
about it that way,
it-
but
it-
that's an interesting.
It
point.
almost discourages
Yeah.
someone from getting a job, minimum
because
wage.
I'm looking at this. I'm saying, okay, if I'm making more money by actually getting government assistance, why would I go out and get a job at $15 an hour? It's going to put me in jeopardy of getting that
Right.
money.
Because the
That's
subsidy is
a good
paying the
point.
bulk of my rent.
Excellent point. Excellent
right?
point.
And if I get a job that doesn't pay me enough, now I have to pay a larger portion,
That's right.
which I can't afford to.
Yeah.
And then I don't have some of the other assistance, food stamps, things like
That
that.
just goes to show you when these people are actually deciding on these public policies, you got to kind of peel back the layers, so you can really see, okay, what is the real impetus behind putting this up and supporting this as a public policy? Because usually the policies are supposed to support everyone. Public policy, and policies that are promulgated for the development of people, civil society, but in actuality, it's usually geared towards keeping certain people, certain demographics under their thumb.
See, that's why I love you, brother, because you finished my thought. I was going to say, there goes that trap,
That's
right?
that trap. Yeah.
Because that's the trap.
Yeah.
It's that you get into this, and so when we were talking earlier, and we were talking about the education piece, right, and uplifting yourself so that you don't fall into this trap, because what happens is, if you don't get an education, you're more likely to be in line if you get a job for one of these $15 an hour jobs, right?
That is why we're having situations in the city of Boston. So this is my other hit. Minus, I'm going back to education now because I'm trying to figure out.
No,
why
they tie in.
Yeah, it all does. So minus Latin Academy and Latin School
In the O'Brien.
in O'Brien. What is the population based on race? Based on ethnicity in the city of Boston of the schools? Is it predominantly black or predominantly
It's close to 90%. 90%.
There's the issue right there.
But to your point, and you raise a very good one. When you look inside the other non-white, people of color, right? White Caucasian. Out of that small number, the vast majority of that, 8 to 9%, are in those 3 schools that you just named.
There you go. And
So-
those schools are doing extremely well.
Yes.
You know, they don't have any of the issues. How many calls for service had the Boston Police Department had to go to at Latin School?
Well, I'll make it even better, right? When you because literally a side by side comparison, right? You have the O'Brien.
It's not too far from Latin, by the way.
No. This is what I'm saying. Hear me out, my brother, right? Because I give you a side by side, literally a side by side comparison.
Okay.
Right. Latin. The O'Brien is an exam school, one of the top notch, probably either one or two. Next to Latin. Right next door is Madison Park. They're attached by walls. That's why I say side by side comparison, literally. The number of calls to Madison Park is probably over 600 a year. Next door, I don't think I've been there once.
Really?
To the O'Brien, which is the exam. That's why I say I'm giving you literally a side by side comparison.
So what is an ethnicity, a percentage of students at the O'Brien, as opposed in terms of white, as opposed to the students at Madison?
Probably Madison Park, probably maybe 1%, 2%. Next door, probably 4 or 5%. There's not a whole lot, but the ones that choose to get their kids in there are getting a top-notch education, right?
But they're going to those three schools. So where I'm going with this, Larry, is that Boston has the model to have a very solid public education institutions running throughout the school district. They already have the model, and we call them Latin Academy, and O'Brien.
Yes.
Why aren't those models being migrated over to the other schools?
Well, that's a great question. And not only that, to add insult to injury, we have some of the best academic higher learning education systems
in the country,
if
not the world,
who get tax breaks from the city of Boston.
Now, see, that's why I love you, brother. You're going right down my line. That's my main of thought. Because why? So if the issue is we have difficulties migrating those models over, then why not reach out to the higher education who are getting tax breaks?
Not reach out, but demand.
To bring them in and say, help us with this, as a part of those tax breaks. Why not? So it can be done.
Right.
That's where I'm going.
Well, think about it
if they want to do it.
Dr. Bradley, look at the expansion of Northeastern, Harvard, and all those in those areas, Wentworth, MIT, all of those schools in that are a stone throw away from our students. Madison Park is right down the street from Northeastern, right across the street from Roxbury Community College. Even that community college is not doing well, but it's right across the street from Madison Park, and it's not even achievable to most of the kids that are there. Madison Park is a level 4 school. For folks who don't know, that means that it's in jeopardy of being taken over because it's doing so underperforming. That the likelihood that anyone will accept your diploma realistically at any college is slim to none.
Okay, so who's the principal at Madison Park now?
Well, they've had in the last 10 years.
Are you serious?
Because you operate in level 4, so at the school year, it's not performing well. The principal can only bring back 50% of the staff that was there the previous year. So, and they have to notify them right around this time. So now I tell you, and then so seniority and all that goes out the window. So it allows you the flexibility. The union rules don't apply. But what happens is if I tell you in February that your services are no longer going to be required at the end of the year, how invested are you going to be?
I'm not very invested at all. I'm looking for another job.
That's your investment, right?
You're probably going to get. I'm probably going to use my sick time.
Exactly, right.
Try to find another job.
So this is the constant cycle. So honestly, I know within a 7-year period, they had 7 principals at that school.
7 principals within 7 years?
Yes. It was almost like 1 a year. If most of them made it through the year, either they didn't have the proper credentials or there was some issues. So that school has been unstable. Most of the mainstream high schools in the city are underperforming.
So why can't they use the same model minus the testing that they're using? What are they doing in Latin Okay, what method of operation they're doing to run that school that can't be done in Burke?
You asked some great questions, and that is one of them. One of the reasons, and it's my opinion, is that because, like I said, having a first close-hand upfront view of it is what I see is an infrastructure. One, you're testing kids to see where their ability is, right? And so you're placing them where they can learn. What we're seeing is that in some of these exam schools for the last 2 years, and this is where you're going to start to see the deterioration at those schools, is that there were lawsuits filed saying it's not fair that you have to take a test to get in those schools. Well, now we're seeing kids who are being set up to fail because let's put Johnny in there, even though Johnny is reading at a second grade level, but so we can include that somehow that's going to pull him up. If he hasn't been prepared to perform at Latin, he's only going to fail at Latin.
Well, that goes back to the foundation of education. If you have a poor foundation in anything you're building, it's not going to stand.
Right.
So if you have poor foundations of education in the schools, in the elementary schools, which is what I'm getting here, then you can't compete at any level, in a Latin or a school like that. But what I'm trying to say is that why can't that operation that they're using at Latin and the support
be modeled and replicated
in those foundational, schools where you get the foundational education.
Well, Dr. Bradley, that's the $1.4 billion question. right. Because you'd say, well, why can't we do this? And we know we're not going to get everyone at that level, but it starts early on, like you said, the foundation. So what are we doing in pre-K, K? Because Boston now, this year is the first year where there are no longer any middle schools. So we're seeing K through 8 and then 8 through 12. Well, we're also seeing the problem of mixing those younger people in with these older kids and the problems that come with that, right? It's having older kids in the same space as younger kids and the influence that they have on.
Well, brother, listen, my phone is rocking more so than Pastor Hoff's laptop, because I have a brother.
617-282-0685 is the calling number here. 617-282-0685. You're listening to At the Round Table with Manuel. Go ahead.
I have a brother that makes a very good point here. Dr. Price is Pastor Price is saying, in a capitalist society, you have to create a class of workers and one of entrepreneurs. That's why BPS and other underpinning urban districts don't change. Look up the data on the unions as well. They are strong and influential in underperforming schools. Wow. The union. He makes a very valid point.
Is, and see what his point is, because now it's got me thinking. If you just take that outside of Boston, even outside of Massachusetts, you go to other places like Chicago and Philly, you find the same thing where it's predominantly, to his point, he's right, predominantly people of color, kids of color, we have underperforming. Because you go to suburban towns, you say, well, how is it that their kids are learning and they don't have these problems?
But one of the pushbacks that I would have on Pastor Price comment is that in a capitalist society, I do concur that you have to create a class of workers, but the jobs that those class of workers would be doing are no longer in our society. You know what I mean? That way I would say. You know what I mean? We push those offshore. Why? In pursuit of a higher profit margin.
Right.
So you have the jobs that my parents were pursuing are no longer here. So we're still creating workers for jobs that no longer exist in our society.
You are so right, because when you say that, again, you got my juices flowing here. I'm thinking, my mom worked at Polaroid. Some of her
Where's
siblings,
Polaroid now?
They're no longer here. Right.
Point well taken.
Gillette. One of her siblings worked at Gillette. Another one worked at General Motors. Right. These were good paying jobs. These were assembly line jobs, but you could take care of your family. Everything got automated, right? And so a lot of those places shut down where you have a robot doing the job better in a lot of cases, right? Because they don't call in sick. They don't
exactly
no vacation.
So
no
the
pension.
human component of that particular strategy now, working strategy, would be creating workers who can repair the robots.
Right.
How much of robotics do you see in the Boston public school system?
Well, you don't, right? And so
I'm resting my case. You
no,
know?
you're making your case too.
So we're creating a class of workers to work on a similar line that exists in China and Malaysia and those other Asian countries. Right. They don't exist here, but we're not creating people who can actually work on the mechanics to repair the equipment that's actually doing assembly in our country.
Well,
it doesn't make any sense.
Because you know what, I was watching one of the talk news shows one morning, and to your point, because you talk about all of this offshore, right? Mm-hmm. And they had a guest on, and they were talking about that, and they said, okay, so we're going to do an experiment here. I want you to take off, the only clothing you can keep on is what was made in America.
Well, you're naked. You're naked, bro.
They had to stop. They had to stop.
You know what I mean? Pornography is going to
right. And because we put clothing and stuff on, we don't think about it. Right. We go to the store, we buy things, right? And then after I watched it, I started being more observant of going to everything. Most of it was made in China, Sri Lanka,
Vietnam.
Yes. And now one of the places to pump is Haiti because cheap labor.
But the other thing too is, if you think about it, and I think Dr. King made this point in one of his sermons, is that when you wake up in the morning, by the time you actually get to the breakfast table, you have relied on many countries to actually for the toothpaste, for the toothbrush, right. You know, for your clothing. I mean, many other countries. Right. That just shows you how connected we are as a world. The world is the world now is a community.
Right.
You know, we have a world community, but the problem here is that we're producing kids in our public school system who can't compete in this world community.
And that's why the gentrification is real, right? When we're talking about this housing piece here, Dr. Bradley, and you know, I've seen a lot of people that it was an eye opener for me how many people were renting in Boston, people of color, black people, right? Because a lot of them they've had to move because the housing, even in the neighborhoods where no one wanted to invest in. When I was investing, people thought I was crazy, right? But the people have sold those houses, or people have come in and bought them and they've condoed them out, so they can't afford to live there anymore. They've had to move outside of the city, and it's it's unaffordable for them to move out. And that's why, like in yesterday's paper, they were saying that Mayor Wu has been giving out more exemptions for people who live outside to live outside the city, who are city workers. So this whole residency requirement, well, if I can't afford it, so you have all these job openings because people can't afford to live here.
Yeah, and you got the job openings, but the jobs are not compensating or paying people enough to stay in the city. You know what I mean? But a good example of that would be in 1968 or 1967, you could buy a brownstone down in South End for a little bit of nothing, $8,000, maybe $9,000. Yeah. Guess how much that brownstone would cost today?
Well, I just told you, Sergeant Homer, right? His family house, probably less than $7,000, worth $8 million, right? Today, in today's market, right? And that's being generous. But again, even I'm looking at homes on Homestead Street, Hutchins Street, areas where they still call it H block gangs. I mean, and they're $900,000. Beautiful places. This isn't for the whole house. This is just for one, basically an apartment, because that's all a condo is an apartment.
That's all it is. You know what I mean? And that creates another problem when people are saying that, you know, home ownership or renting, right. You know, your available apartments are being chewed up over this a condominium approach to people. You know, they're buying these multi-dwelling homes and they're carving them up into condos and they're selling them piece by piece.
That's right.
At $300,000-$400,000
and
a unit.
Your assessment is so on point, because those will never come back on the market as a rental unit.
Exactly. They're gone.
Right.
You know,
right.
Is it.
Right. That 3-family is no longer a 3-family. Those are 3 apartments. Condominiums.
They're 3 individual homes.
That's right.
Built into one unit.
That's right.
It's just that simple. Right. Everybody's coming together. They're pooling their resources for the upkeep of the overall structure.
They're off the market, and all the new stuff that's being built are already condos from the get-go. Yeah. So when they're talking about rent control, what are you going to control? It's already out of control, and you don't have folks who, like I said, that are working here. So even like the city workforce, they're having a hard time finding people to live in the city, to work here, because it's not, I mean, like right now, Boston is trying to obtain lateral transfers for police officers.
That would have never happened when I was on the force.
But not only that, it's a deterrent for people because you have to move back into the city in 6 months. If I'm living in a place where I'm in a good school system, I'm in an affordable home that I've been in, I'm going to give all that up to come into Boston, have to work triples, to have to deal with this, and
to put my kid in the system, put my kid in the school system where he or she could be damaged mentally as well as physically. What? And then I have to try to find a home in a market that's going to be pretty much out beyond my means.
Right.
Doesn't make any sense.
You know you're going to have to put your kid in private school if you can afford it.
Yeah.
But there's not going to be any money left once you buy that house. For what? Yeah. For a job where you're constantly under attack and haven't had a contract in almost 3 years?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good morning, caller. Welcome to At the Round Table.
Good morning. I'd like to make a comment about the so-called affordable housing in Boston. Because, again, I did the math, and for someone who's a low-wage worker, I can't afford to live in Boston, even though the Michelle Wu, along the city council, so-called, have this initiative in making people who want to stay here be more affordable. It's unrealistic because the amount of money it takes for someone like me to buy a house in Boston would take over 20 years.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you live in Boston now?
Yes.
Okay, and so I'm assuming you're renting, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so just ballpark. I'm not trying to get. What is your rent?
$2,200.
$2,200, right?
Yep.
So $2,200, and so would it fair to say what percentage of your rent, of your income, has to go towards your rent?
About 49%. Huh?
Oh, so half. Okay, so then you're probably doing, but still, that's quite a chunk, right? Because in most places, if you're buying a home, they don't want any more than 36% of your income. So you're paying more a month than if you were trying to get a loan that the bank would say that you would qualify for at that ratio.
I am.
That's crazy. Stand by for a second. I think we're gonna caller. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the round table.
Peace. Good morning. It's Jamal calling.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, I mean, funny thing, because when I just saw that in the paper, too, when I go to work Monday, I'm damn sure seeing if I can get me one of those vouchers. But, because to what Dicko's point is as well, so for me, let's use people's kind of in my, bracket.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you work for the city, and we can make the math simple. Let's say you make $100,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Good job, right?
It used to be.
Yeah, right, exactly. So $100,000 a year. Now, obviously, first, off rip, with taxes,
right,
that means you ain't really bringing home $7,000.
Right.
All right?
Mm-hmm.
So now $70,000. Now, like Dick, our rent is the same, $2,200, which is, $24,000 a year. So that's like a quarter of what you originally make.
Right.
And then when you breaking it down after taxes, and then never mind your bills and stuff, because we just talking about rent. Never mind your bills and all that. Yeah, it's like me and my job are like our roommates. We pay the rent together.
That's an interesting way of looking at it.
Jamal always got a way of phrasing things. But I would be fair to say, and this is nothing. I'm not disparaging where you gentlemen live, but we know back in the day, if you were spending $2,200, you was living in a really nice place, right? You were living down in the waterfront. It'd be fair to say that $2,200 doesn't get you much today as far as amenities. Fair to say?
Oh, absolutely not. And not for nothing. And I have a sweetheart deal. I mean, luckily my landlord knows me and is gracious. No, but she could easily be getting 26, 27, 28 for what I'm at. And as you said, some of those houses where I used to live on Humboldt and whatnot, some of those people are charging, $28,000 to $3,000 a month in rent.
Right.
And
$3,000 a month
for one bedroom. Yeah.
Yeah, they taking these 3 families and chopping it up into 3 condos, selling them to somebody for 650, 700,000 per unit. I mean, it's.
Yeah, no, they're more closer to 8 and above. Well, they said the average home price in Boston is close to $800,000, and that's if you're talking about $800,000, you're talking about a fixer up.
Yeah, I was talking about the condo units.
Right.
So for instance, like what they did to my grandmother's three family house.
Mm-hmm.
Now each floor is its own individual thing, and they probably peeled those people for, like I say, 650, 700 each floor.
Wow. So just think about what you just said, Jamal, how powerful it is. A place that you grew up in, lived in, was your family home, right? And now you can't even afford to live there.
Absolutely.
So I guess the question is, because it doesn't roll. It's not like Walmart where you can roll back the prices, right? And that's what we were saying, is that these are off the market. Like, that was a 3-family home and most likely was rented out as such. Now they're individual units. So those are not coming back on the market to be affordable rentals, and everything that's being built is not being built to be affordable. And like the mayor was saying about giving this land to developers, these big developers are not looking to build on these little lots. There's not enough money to be made.
Well, in addition to that, though, let's define what is affordable and who can
in
afford
today's
it
market.
in today's market, and how do you come to determine, what is that affordable rate?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the things that people are saying that are affordable, most people can't afford them. Because of the mathematics they're using, the formulas they're using to determine the rate, the average price for that particular home. I mean, it boggles my mind, Larry, that you're telling me that someone's getting $3,000 a month for a 1-bedroom.
Oh yeah.
My God, that's more than my mortgage. Are you kidding me?
In here, like I said, it says in this article here, it says the Federal Reserve, Black and Hispanic families owned about 25 cents to 23 cents, respectively, per $1 of their white families. So even with that, how do you afford it?
But if you're making the $15 an hour, how are you meeting a $3,000 a month mortgage, rent?
Right.
It's for 1-bedroom, and never mind that you have children or you have. Well, you're making $15 an hour. You can't do it. Even if you have two paychecks coming in, you're just not going to have enough to do it.
No,
you need at least 3 or 4.
Right. So I know, Jamal, you've probably been looking, and Dick, you've probably looked. What are the prospects for folks like yourself who are trying to get into the home ownership? Because all that you're paying in rent, let's just do the math, right? You guys are paying $2,200 a month times 12, right? Almost $30,000 a year. That's never.
It's $24,600.
Okay, that's right. That's never coming back, right, to you. That's not an investment for you. And then the other question is, how do you save paying that kind of money, the average person paying that kind of money? Because that was the whole thing back then. Rents were affordable when you were renting, so you could save up to buy a home. That's almost impossible with the rents that you have to pay today to be able to put any money aside to buy that home. Because if you need 20% on a home that's $800,000, who's got that sitting around in the bank? The 20% after paying the rent and everything else.
Exactly. And, not for nothing, too, a lot of us have to get a more accurate and realistic sense of our own finances. I've had conversations with a bunch of my friends who's like, I'm looking at this house, or, man, I would love to get that building, or, man, we should do this, or we should do that. And it's like, okay, so even if somebody said, hey, we're going to give you this building for free, do you have the $3,000 it might cost for taxes?
Well, that's why I was saying when the mayor and her State of the City announcement was about giving this land to people, I'm like, you're giving them something. What are they going to pitch a tent, put a sleeping bag out there? Because the people that you're trying to supposedly target don't have the resources or access to the capital.
Well, people misunderstood. She said she would give free land to developers who have plans for affordable housing. See, a lot of people in my community just heard free land and thought everybody could go sign up for some free land.
Yeah.
It don't work like that. Yes, you have to be able to develop it. And even in my community, some people was like, okay, well, shoot, then I'll just develop it then. Okay, great. You have to find a developer, you have to find a financier, and what you will find is these people don't really invest too much in first time. You know, if you're trying to develop a project in 2023 and you just incorporated your development company in 2023, they might not loan you the money.
No, and the big time developers, we know they're not interested in parcels like that. They're not, unless they can put 60, 70 units in there, they're not going to touch it.
Yeah, because what it takes to be affordable, for them to build it and be affordable,
right?
It has to be larger and more
expensive.
People don't like that.
Well,
but, you know, it takes money to do this.
To that point, Jamal, when's the last time you saw a sign for Suffolk or even Cruz in front of a 2 or 3 family construction going up? When have you seen this sign out there? Now, I see it in these big conglomerates, you know, like at Warren and Clifford Street. Cruz is doing that, and I'm happy for them. But I'm saying is that those big, the ones who have access to do it are not interested in it. The ones who want to do it don't know what they're doing, right? Like you said, those folks you talk who want to start this thing and don't have a clue, because just out of the box alone, just all the paperwork and stuff, you're looking at about $10,000 with your plans and permits and, you know, paying.
Just to get the architectural stuff just drawn up.
That's right.
And then you're going to have to do that 3 or 4 times.
Right.
Guarantee the people are going to shoot it down.
There you go.
You're going to have to redo it and redo it and redo it. And them architectures, you know, as you know, they don't work for free.
No.
So every time you go back to the drawing board, you also got to go back to the checkbook.
Right. So, Ditko, have you been able to save paying this kind of money to even think about buying a house here in the city?
Yeah.
Nope.
Most people can't, Larry.
No. So are you locked into the rent for the rest?
Most people watch.
I'm not trying to be locked in for the rest of my life for winter, but when the way the cities keep boasting about affordable housing, it just doesn't become complicated. It just becomes more of a nuisance because I still need more resources in hoping to get where I need to go, which is own a home in Boston.
Mm-hmm. Great. So Jamal, to you, you know, you were trapped in that. Like, I'm a city employee. Luckily, I don't have to live in the city. Thank goodness, because, you know, I mean, I could, but it's because of what I did early on that I'm would be able to afford. But to me as an investor, this is just crazy. We're seeing it's hard to attract people to the city. Like I was saying earlier, that even Boston we have a deficiency in policing. Teachers, Dr. Bradley was, that they don't have to live in the city. Teachers don't, but police, fire have to live in for their first 10 years. And then most other city employees have to live here their whole career. And this problem of this residency is having an impact on trying to attract employees for the workforce here in the city of Boston, because it's just, I mean, no one's going to be working just to pay their rent. Like you said, Jamal, how did you phrase it? It's you're checking your rent roommates or something. How did you phrase it?
Me and my job are roommates.
Right. So when you look at your check and you see the only one that's benefiting is your landlord, because you can't go out to eat, you can't keep the lights on, you're paying, borrow from Peter to pay Paul, and if you strip away the taxes and all that, what's really left for the person to take a job here in the city and have to live here?
Yeah, I mean, so luckily for me, I am a miser, so I am able to do all that and still save money. Plus, I have a couple businesses on the side, so I got some extra income coming in.
But you're the exception, not the norm. That's saying most people just have that one job with the city.
Absolutely. And once again, you know, and I have to really speak to my frugality, because I also don't live a lifestyle that a lot of these people live. I'm not at these restaurants every night and at the bar and going to the little social event and buying $100 ticket to be seen and $50 here. And I don't do none of that foolishness. I spend my money frugally. I shop frugally, and you know, so I don't waste a lot of extra stuff. I mean, I have my guilty pleasures, but you know, I tend to not waste money. Some of my buddies spend more one night in the bar than I do all week. Yeah. You know.
Wow.
But I think Dr. Bradley was sitting here amazed that what the rents were here in Boston.
I can't believe it, man. I'm saying to myself, one of the ways that I would probably attack this, if you want to do rent control, is look at what is the mortgage that the owner is paying on the home, and then justify the rent that the owner is actually asking for the apartments as relates to trying to pay that mortgage.
The proposal that the mayor is it's going to exempt, I think, up to a 4-family or something like that, because they realize that someone buying a 2-family cannot afford to get a rent-a-crow. In these other places, it's not coming back. I mean, this is just theater, in my opinion, to say, look, what I'm trying to do, something that I can get credit for trying, even though it's not going to. And then you blame these greedy landlords and these greedy owners. But when you look at what it costs to acquire these homes today, there's no way you can.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
But you may have some price gouging as well. So if you look at the fact that, okay, we say a landlord is paying, got a mortgage for $125,000. So what? I know that's not going to be. I'm just as for an example. So what would be the appropriate rent if he's renting at home for that particular amount? You know what I mean? If it's 1.2 million, then what would be the appropriate rent for renting that particular apartment or multiple apartments so that he can cover his mortgage and with a little bit in the bank? Why allow these individuals to gouge? Allow the individuals to set
I hear what you're
high
saying,
prices?
but the problem is, like I said, using the Walmart, you can't roll back the prices because most of the people that have these properties now have paid top dollar for them. Right. So if it was somebody, like for instance, I have properties I've had for quite a while, and people are like, oh, I can't believe you don't charge market, because I know what it cost me, so I'm being fair so the people can live, because I don't have to get every dime that I could get from it. But that's me, because I think, like some of these families would not be able to live, but they shouldn't be punished. So I make enough that I'm comfortable with it. But if I sold that to somebody else, that same property that I've had for 25 years, it's paid off. Now that person has a $700,000-$800,000 mortgage. There's no way they're going to be able to charge what I'm charging.
I got it.
And that's where the problem is, that most of these have changed because most people have cashed in. And said, and you see it, and Jamal, I know you travel a lot. You go down to Jordan, price. You used to be able to buy houses down, the prices down there, because a lot of folks took their money and went to these other states where housing wasn't so expensive. Now it's driving up the prices in those areas.
It's a matter of supply and demand.
Right.
If I got people migrating from Massachusetts with their retirement because they're going to get more
with
money,
all that cash from their house.
Cash from the house. Now they're building up these nice homes, and it's going to go up. Yeah. But I think there's a solution that we have to get to the table and sit down and talk about it and try to figure out what is the solution. Other than that, Boston will become another San Francisco.
Boston has just beat out. I don't know if you guys are aware of this. Boston has now replaced San Francisco as the number 2 most expensive place in the country to live. The only place that beats us, we'll probably never catch up, is New York. We are number 2 now in the country as the most expensive city.
We are more expensive than San Francisco?
San Francisco. We just beat San Francisco out recently. Were you guys aware of that, Jamal and Tika?
I wasn't aware of that.
I think we might be third, though.
We're number 2. We just beat out San Francisco. Go ahead and Google it. I know I was shocked when I saw that recently.
L.A. is not in that mix no more?
Nope. Boston is more expensive than L.A. It was right. The number 3. It's New York, Boston, San Francisco.
Really?
Okay, yeah. So the way they must do it then must be based on like population and averages.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because if you go to that city, if you go to L.A., you ain't finding nothing cheaper than Boston.
No.
Like, I mean, you'll be paying what I'm paying for like a 2-3 bedroom. You'll be paying that for a studio.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So. And I know San Francisco is extremely expensive, and we know New York as well.
But when you think about it, think about this, gentlemen. Everything that was on the market for in Boston, if it was on the market for $700,000, they were going for $200,000, $100,000 over asking price. Nothing was selling for, like you used to list a house and it was $499. If you got $499, you were doing good. Most of the time, you took less. Now. Everything is going above asking price in Boston.
So people are getting into these bidding wars?
Oh, yes. Wow. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Things are selling the first day. First hour. I mean, you cannot walk into these places now, with these houses what prices we're going for was ridiculous. I mean, above asking. We've had Cora on the show. She's like many times she's selling a house. it's going for $200,000 more than the asking price. So now that's locked in the future prices. I'm not going to take less than I paid for it. Yeah, it's crazy. It is crazy. So, gentlemen, we only got a couple of minutes left. Jamal, what do you see the future for folks like yourself? Like I said, I know you're in a little better, but I mean, and Dick, I'll go to you first because you seem to be in more of a precarious situation where, you know, maybe the resource, and I don't know what your resource. I'm just, you know, to be able to transition from renting to owning. Do you see that future getting any brighter?
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I don't see it because with gentrification still alive and well in Boston, people like me, in the next 2 or 3 years is going to leave them. Sad but true.
Wow. Jamal?
Yeah, I mean, same with me. I mean, I'll stay here as long as I have a job to bring home the bacon. But my plan is that I'll be buying income property elsewhere in Georgia, where my daughter is. And, you know, that's my plan.
First time I heard you talking about bringing home some bacon.
Figuratively.
Right, yeah, figuratively. I know, right. No, it's crazy. You know, when I was buying property when I was younger in some of these neighborhoods, and people thought I was crazy, and now they think I'm a genius. I'm like, nah. It's like, one guy told me a long time ago. He said, you know, you better buy. I said, why not? He said, they can build more houses, but what they can't build is more land. And
it's the land that's very important.
Well, all these other more desirable neighborhoods, they're all built in. There's nothing else. There's no. You go to West Roxbury and places like that. I mean, I don't know how they squeeze some of these houses in there.
But that also means, like, if you have a house who's that's dilapidated and that's having problems, you have a problem maintaining it,
tearing those down.
You know, you can sell the house, demolish the house and build another house over it, and you know, so you can get good money for the house. You know, I'm thinking about the house that I own in Boston. I paid $124,000 for it. You know, my ex-wife has it now.
I'll pay you double.
I'll pay you double. No, I did that. My partner and I, we bought a house in Newton. Right, it was right down the street from the city hall. We weren't buying it. It was a house. We were buying it for the land, and we tore it down. You know, they tried to not let us tear it down because they knew what we were doing. Because you know, and we built a brand new house there. That's what's happening. That's the only way.
And you sell that, and you get more. You know, you get more money. You get more money for than what you than what you bought it for, because that's your profit.
Exactly, the land itself. But I'm looking at land on Washington Street down in Nubian Square area, $1.9 million.
For the land?
For the land. For the land.
$2 million?
Yes, for the land. But see, that's for some those Suffolks and Crews in them who have that money to put down it because they're going to put a skyscraper up there. You know, that's not for investors like me who, you know, maybe put up a six family or a triplex. I mean, it's out of control. Yeah. But the genie's out of the bottle.
Yeah, but you got to rein that in, though, man.
The genie's out of the bottle. Gentlemen, thank you. We're about to wind down. Jamal, as usual, I will see you tomorrow before the Super Bowl.
Absolutely. And let me ask y'all a quick police question before we go. Because I saw that the state police guy, he's out of there.
Yep.
Yeah. So now, who is in charge of that? That's just a more
the governor. The governor appoints that. The governor appoints that.
And from my understanding, and I have to go back and just to verify it, is that with the new changes and the reforms, that they can now, because before they can only bring someone from internally, and it had to be someone in the ranks, and there's no one of color at the rank where they could choose from. So, but from my understanding is that they can now bring someone in from the outside with the reforms that came, because the state police was on lockdown, because you have to be, unlike Boston, you have to be a lieutenant colonel. It's almost equivalent to our deputies or superintendents to be considered for the chief, for the colonel's job.
You have to be a major is equivalent to our deputy superintendent. A lieutenant colonel is equivalent to our superintendent. So you had to be a lieutenant colonel in order to be considered for the chief's job.
So they were trying to change that because their structure is designed to keep us from being in leadership. There is no one of color on their command staff and at the state police. That's what I
wanted to know. All right.
So that's definitely should have that conversation. And Dr. Bradley's available.
no. Dr. Bradley.
Dr. Colonel Bradley.
No. That won't happen.
Dick, thank you. Jamal, thank you.
Yep.
All right, take care.
Y'all be blessed, brothers.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So it's just amazing that I know.
It's crazy. I'm just thinking about the house that I gave up in Hyde Park. I'm like, man, that's a whole lot of dough now. Yeah. But I'm good. I'm good with that. Yeah. But my point here is that you have to rein that in.
How do you?
That's the $2 million question.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How do you rein in a situation where people are getting 1.9 for land?
Yes.
Come on, Larry.
There are lots and stuff, Dr. Bradley, I'm telling you, in the city here where I could have bought the whole street up for $100,000. The city was giving away these lots. No one would touch them. They were just desolate trash. Basically, people using them for dumps. Mm-hmm. Now, you can't get near there. You can't get near there. And it's cost prohibited for people. Like I said, this whole idea, the developers, if they don't see it, they're more willing to take a chance on those now because they can get these top dollars, but it's got to be where they can put enough on there. They're not building affordable housing on there, I can tell you that. It's not. The cost too much.
Nope.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us. Again, brother, thank you for another spirited conversation.
Yeah, well,
if you get any deals in Boston that you don't want to take, just give me a call.
I got to get home and get ready for class.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Who's this? Hey. How you doing, man?
Yeah.
Did we just talk to you?
Cause I still believe that anything is possible as long as you